The earth is turning into Gomorrah as the sulfur rains begin. As reported by ABC Net in Australia and other Australian news outlets, on March 17, 2025, surfers on the beaches of South Australia encountered a very strange phenomenon: toxic yellow foam in the water and on the sand. Surfers, and more specifically one Anthony Rowland, were the first to sound the alarm loudly. He visited Wading Beach with some friends last Saturday and wrote about his experience on his blog. He said, "While we were there on this beach, we started coughing. Then we walked away from the beach and we were still coughing even after we went up the hill, and not only us but several other people from a parking lot came up and told us that they had the same cough, even though they had not even gotten to the water yet." Roland went on to tell the news media that his eyes and throat were also hurting and his cough continued throughout the day. He wrote about this incident on his blog and was shocked that immediately 100 other surfers confirmed his same observations, and reading their comments, the guy realized that he had a very narrow escape. The first brave divers and surfers who encountered the problem did not notice much. They only saw a yellowish fog over the bay, a fog. And while they were swimming there, their vision began to be disturbed. It became blurry, and they began to see everything double, and so on. And these symptoms persisted for several days. The next bathers had already seen some kind of yellowish foam in the seawater, and when they tried to swim, they began to have such a fierce sore throat and burning in their eyes that they gave up their attempt to swim and took to the road and slowly ran away from the terrible place. And the last people who went to the beach did not even dare to enter the water because the beach was full of dead fish, crabs, and squids, and the foam was already on the sand. And then the competent authorities intervened, and now they have fenced off the beach and banned the public from coming. Everyone is now wondering what this whole phenomenon was and where it did come from. And they had already put some academic on TV, and he said the usual song about the seaweed blooming, naturally everyone surrounding him with fans, and they continue to repeat the incidents. Some academic has already gone and said this, and if all this happened in a river, the issue would not interest anyone, since the trivial answer would be obvious. The factory next door must have secretly at night discharged some kind of poisonous toxical waste, which it could not have discharged anywhere else. The problem in this case, however, is that there are no factories in the ocean. People think that many versions of what is the genesis of this paradoxical phenomenon, what caused it. Some hesitantly said that perhaps the Chinese war fleet, which in the previous days had been circling Australia and had organized a patrol around Australia, had dumped some chemical waste. This version is not so convincing, as more than 2 weeks had passed since then, and this is evident from the dates of the geolocation of the Chinese ships. And this time is too long for anything to have come out on the coast. Besides, the chemical toxics or waste should have spread over a very large circular area. However, this way of thinking is interesting, and one can think of either some cunning military experiments or the action of some aliens who are also increasingly making their presence known, and who also probably throw something into the seawater from time to time. But all these speculations have a weak point in their narrative, which is the small extent of the pollution. If you dump chemicals 100 miles from the coast, the wave will spread them to the same 100 miles, if not 500, which means that the source of the poisonous pollution was somewhere nearby. Submarines do not come that close to the coast. That is why the theory of Nimburology is in the spotlight at the moment. Nibiru, that is. Nibiru. And as the news in other areas are writing, once again, the countries covered by red dust of the Sahara, which is so dense that it looks like fog. Countries like Greece and Italy, southern Europe. African dust covering areas of Greece as well. And although the Sahara Desert is not really that far from Greece, the journey is very funny. 29 days out of 30, the Aegean Sea looks like a chimney in the square between the high-rise buildings where the north wind blows, the so-called Meltemia, or as the ancient Greeks called them, the Etesian winds. And that is why the Greeks, since the time of Ulysses, with this north wind, Meltemia, they easily sailed south, but to return from the south to the north, they rowed hard and moved with great effort and with the sweat of their faces. One could, of course, claim that this dust of the Sahara came from Turkey and Ukraine, and that the dust had traveled somewhere in the circular manner, but no, this is not the case. We also have some debris and dust that reduces visibility in the air since morning, and also the wind was also northerly and even became somewhat cooler. Therefore, this wind does not come from the Sahara Desert. It was not southerly or warm because it is very hot there, so the Sahara Desert is not to blame. So we tend to believe that this is something that falls from the sky. It's just that in Australia it fell more than usual, and therefore it's nightmarish just to think about what would happen if a concentration of such toxic material fell everywhere. It would be a real acid rain, consisting of pure sulfuric acid, similar to that which exists on our nearby planet, or the sister planet of the Earth, Venus, which the people called Avierino, which means the morning star, and it resembles the Earth, but is covered by dense clouds of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, and the pressure and temperature on the surface are much greater than those of the Earth. And then it would drag and wash away everything that people have built with so much sweat. So, like all people, we too are helpless and doomed to react to these phenomena. So let's follow the next developments, which are running rapidly. The biblical destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot and his 2 daughters flee for safety from Sodom, whose inhabitants as well as the entire surrounding area and vegetation are destroyed behind them. Smoke rose from the earth all around the Dead Sea as if from a furnace. Further back, Lot's wife is seen, who is turned into a pillar of salt because she turned her head and looked back to see what was happening, what she left behind. She was homesick, meaning that her heart was set on it, even though she had been warned by the angel of God not to do so. The inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah were overcome by the passion of, we know what. This passion is so abominable in the eyes of God that the cities were destroyed from the face of the earth with brimstone and fire. Quote, and the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities and the vegetation of the ground. Genesis 19:24-25. Today's world of science and evolution. African dust painted the sky of Greece red. Images of Revelation in Athens. And the red sky according to meteorology. The red sky means it will blow. The red sky before sunrise is a sign of rain. A rosy sky at sunset means good weather. When the sky is a dark or deep red, it indicates rain and wind. So the red sky, according to the words of Jesus Christ. And the Pharisees and Sadducees came to him, tempting him and asking him to show them a sign from heaven. And he answered them, saying, when it is evening, ye say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning it will be winter, for the sky is red and overcast. Hypocrites, ye know how to discern the face of the sky, but ye cannot discern the signs of the times. Matthew 16:2-3. So red sky means the end is near. High levels of Sahara dust have enveloped the southern part of Athens, creating dense fog and resulting in limited visibility. Meteorologists warned that Saharan dust would cover the area during the weekend. Frequency and intensity of Saharan dust phenomena in Greece can vary from year to year, from 7 to 20 episodes, averaging 13 episodes a year, depending on atmospheric conditions and the amount of the dust from the Sahara. The increase in particles in the atmosphere can worsen respiratory diseases such as asthma, bronchitis, and allergies, according to the Hellenic Pulmonary Society warning. Now, mud showers and African dust in areas recently. For Sunday, few clouds expected, temporary increase in local rains in the area of Greece. Now, African dust made of heavy metals. What a shocking chemical analysis in the laboratory showed. According to media, fine sand from the Sahara is carried by winds to and then falls on Europe. Only they have not explained to us why the chemical analysis of sand from the Sahara in every corner of the world shows heavy metals that are particularly harmful to health and not some dust. The chemical analysis of the African dust, quote unquote, that collects on car windshields reveals that it's nothing but heavy metals which are probably used to modify the weather. A laboratory in Bosnia did the analysis and found nickel, barium, aluminum, and other metals in huge quantities. Airplanes that cover the sky with these that are supposed to control sunlight blocking ultraviolet radiation from hitting the earth, they do great harm not only to human health, but in the summer we need UV rays to kill germs and viruses. In the laboratory where the test was done, and it was written in Serbian, it shows that the first column of the reference values that real Sahara sand should have, and in the second column it shows the measured values for samples taken from the surface of the cars. The measured values are literally like from a horror movie and not from the Sahara. Aluminum exceeds the reference volume of desert sand by 728 times in the table. Arsenic exceeds the limit by 44 times, and barium exceeds the limit by 660 times. Iron exceeds the limit 23 times, lead 8 times, zinc 64 times. But the biggest shock is the measure value of nickel. The volume of nickel in the sample exceeds the reference volume of nickel in desert sand by 2,500 times. If we express this in percentages, then this is in excess of the limit by 250,000%. Nickel and aluminum oxides are the main components of chemtrails or aerial sprays. What happens when UV rays are blocked by dust? Did you know that ultraviolet radiation is essential for our survival as a human race? This is because ultraviolet radiation serves as the only truly effective disinfectant and weapon against viruses and microbes. It's also the reason why we do not have outbreaks of flu and respiratory disease in the summer. No, it has nothing to do with hot weather, as most people believe. For example, if someone coughs and throws up droplets with the virus, the strong summer UV radiation will kill the virus in a split second. This is exactly why there are no major epidemics of flu and similar respiratory diseases in the summer until recently. So in mid-June, during summer, cases of respiratory diseases, COVID-19 appear. People wonder how it's possible. After all, it is hot. It's hot, but the volume of incident ultraviolet radiation is artificially reduced by these chemicals. The modifiers of ultraviolet radiation on the surface of the planet consist mainly of 3 elements: barium, nickel, and aluminum. The chemical mix of these elements is intended to reflect certain wavelengths of solar radiation back into space, especially the ultraviolet spectrum, which is the main reason for the presence of barium, which binds its wavelength to itself. The nickel serves as a reflector that reflects this wavelength of radiation back into space. And what is the aluminum used for? This is the carrier, the de facto pad for barium-aluminum structure. Arsenic, on the other hand, serves as the glue that holds these parts together and at the nanoparticle level. And everyone is silent and pretends that this is normal. Waking up in the morning and seeing a beautiful blue sky when suddenly planes fly, leaving behind traces which do not dissolve in 2 or 3 minutes, as well as we all remember from childhood. Today, the trace of planes in the sky lasts up to 24 hours. It does not disappear, it simply spreads and stays there. And sometimes it lasts up to 3 whole days. And do you know that there is no aerial spraying at all in Europe today? In Ukraine, that's where there is none. The Ukrainians themselves report social networks that thanks to what's going on there, they again have clear skies and beautiful blue skies, which they remembered when they were children for the last 2 years. Now, they're listening to former CIA Chief John Brennan speak at the 2016 CFR conference about modifying weather around the world with stratospheric aerosol injection. And Brennan's speech said, what has caught my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAAI, a method of seeding stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat. The process also relatively inexpensive. National Research Council estimates that a fully developed SAI program would cost about $10 billion a year. So this is what they're doing to European citizens, being accountable without being accountable to anyone. And this method, like many others that will follow in the future, with impacts not only to health but also to life around the globe, plant and animal. Please leave your comments about this, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.